Antonio Vargas of the Washington Post.
Jose Antonio Vargas is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist.
I lived the American dream, building a successful career as a journalist. But I was living a lie. I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told a lot of people. I'm actually an undocumented immigrant. Immigration is stories, so here's my story. My grandparents legally immigrated from the Philippines in the mid-1980s. My grandfather decided that he was going to get his grandson to come to America. One morning, my suitcase was packed. I was 12. It's been 18 years since I've seen my mother. So I'm launching a whole campaign about what it means to be an American and the fact that I am an American. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country. In 2010, undocumented people paid $11.2 billion in state and local taxes.
My name is Erika Andiola. I'm from Colombia.
From Nigeria.
From Brazil.
I'm an undocumented immigrant from Germany.
We mow your lawn. We work at your houses. Maybe we're your doctors. Maybe we're nurses. We're not who you think we are.
People who have come here illegally should not be citizens of the United States.
So what happens in Iowa if you discover as a cop that somebody's an undocumented person?
I'm looking for freedom.
A major blow for immigration reform today. The Senate voted against the DREAM Act.
I'm a conservative and I'm a hardcore Republican, but I don't agree with them on this.
You're an illegal alien.
No, I'm an undocumented immigrant.
No, you're an illegal.
Wait, no, actually, this is...
I think I've broken a law just having you in my studio.
Who is really the Americans? I would say people came here to do good for this country.
We dream of a path to citizenship. We dream of contributing to the country we call our home. I have this fantasy that I get a green card and I fly, and that my mother would be there waiting for me.
The trailer for Documented, a film by an undocumented American, written, produced, and directed by Jose Antonio Vargas, who joins us now in our New York studio. The film opens tonight in New York at the Village Eats Cinema, coming to theaters all over the country. It's set to air on CNN this summer. Jose, welcome back to Democracy Now! Talk about your journey now in the context of what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you for having me here. I actually live just a few blocks away, so it's always nice to be here. I'm more convinced now than I was 3 years ago when I outed myself that before we change the politics of this issue, we have to change the culture of this issue, right? I've done about 200 events in 42 states, traveling around the country while filming this film. And the fact that people still think we're all, quote-unquote, Mexicans, if there's anything wrong with being Mexican, and the fact that people think this is, you know, a Latino criminal issue, right, tells us kind of the long ways we have to go. And I have to tell you, like, for me, the most tragic thing doing all the traveling is how many people, after they find out that I'm Filipino, people say illegal and Mexican interchangeably. I mean, I have to say that that's, for me, the most tragic thing. And that's a big cultural problem, right? People think that just because you happen to be brown or Latino in this country, you're not even supposed to be here, even if you were born here. And so I really wanted to make a film, and this is why I wanted to direct the film myself, you know, to make a statement, right? And to me, the film is a cultural statement, not a political one. I worked pretty hard to make sure that it isn't overly political, just so I can play it in places. I've done a couple of Tea Party screenings and doing a lot more conservative kind of oriented events.
But you started out, as I understand it, to make a film about the Dreamers, and
yes.
somehow or other you then decided reluctantly to focus on your own story. Can you talk about that transition? Very reluctantly. Well, first of all, I mean, after, you know, the privilege of outing myself in the New York Times, I mean, it was a 4,000-word essay, and after that, I thought I was done. I didn't want to have to say anything more than that. And so originally, my original idea was Inside Job for Immigration. Charles Ferguson's film was an original inspiration. And then when I started filming, I was like, do I really want to over-politicize this issue? So I'm like, waiting for Superman meets the DREAM Act, right? At least that was my conception in my head. And then about a year into filming, it kind of shifted. One of my filmmaker friends said, you can't do this film and not put your mom in it.
then I decided to send a film crew to the Philippines. I mean, how do I direct a film if I can't even go to the Philippines to film her, right? So I sent a film crew. And
because you can't leave
because
this
I can't
country.
leave this country. I've been here since I was 12, 21 years this August. So I sent a film crew, then the footage gets back, and, you know, as you saw in the film, there's like, you know, footage of my mom just looking straight into the camera, and that was just, you know, I've seen more of my mother in this film editing her than I have in 21 years. So it's just very surreal, I have to say.
So then you made the decision to focus more on your own story and your and the impact on your family of your immigration status.
But this is what happens, right? This is how do you explain? I couldn't write, you know, 21 years of not seeing her. I could not write that. But in some way, the film shows that, right? Like when she and I Skyped for the first time on film. That's the experience and the reality for so many, you know, immigrants of this family who are separated from their families all across the world. So I wanted to capture that kind of experience, and I think the film does that.
Talk about your own experience. You said you came to this country at the age of 12.
Age 12. Yeah. Then
your mother sent you here.
My mother put me on a plane with a stranger who I thought was my uncle, but, you know, we're Filipinos, so everybody's an uncle. So I thought everything was fine. I got here when I was 12, and then I thought, you know, my grandparents, my mother's parents treated me like I was one of their own. And then 4 years after I got here, I went to the DMV to get a driver's permit, and that's when I realized that the green card that my grandfather had given me was fake. So that's when the lies kind of started. And then a year after that, thankfully for me, I discovered journalism. And the only reason I did it, you know, we didn't have books at home. Writing wasn't like I come from a lower middle class family of, you know, workers, service workers. But writing for me was interesting because it meant that my name would be on a piece of paper, you know, like Juan Gonzalez, New York Daily News. I figured that was a way to just exist. And so I thought if I could be in the piece of paper, that meant that I'm here, right? So I thought I could just like keep doing that. And that's what I did for 13 years until I was 30.
And of course, then in your time in the Washington Post, which I'm sure was covering immigration problems and the undocumented.
No, I ran away. I mean, I remember the guilt I felt during the 2005, you know, during the 2005, 2006, those rallies that happened, right?
In 2006,
I mean, I must have been the only Jose anywhere in the Washington, D.C. newsroom, and I wanted to run away as fast as I could.
Did your employers know you were undocumented?
No, of course not. I mean, I lied. I lied in the forms. And that's what really makes my case more complicated because when I outed myself in the New York Times and also in the film, I admitted to that because I have to, right? I mean, I feel like what's really lacking in this issue is a sense of intellectual honesty, right? There's a great documentary called The Harvest of Empire, for example, right? I mean, I watched that documentary. So
Juan's film actually just aired on the Capitol Tuesday night.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
But, like, how do we have a conversation about immigration and not include that conversation? You know, I mean, there is, and the public, you know, my travels have really shown me that the American public is ready for an honest conversation on this issue, not the same talking points that we hear over and over and over again.
So what was the response to you outing yourself, both in your workplace at the Washington Post and also the U.S. government?
Well, you know, I decided actually that when I outed myself, I basically left all of my jobs. You know, I thought about this pretty carefully, so I can't be employed by anybody. But this is where it gets really interesting. I can actually employ people. So I have an LLC. That's why, you know, I made a film and I hired, I don't know, 40 people total probably to just do the film. So it's been really interesting that way because now I've been forced to become an entrepreneur that way. But the reaction from the journalistic community in general has been rather interesting. I feel like somehow they just took away my journalistic, kind of like, hey, here, you're not a journalist anymore. Now you're this advocate activist thing. And my question to that is, what do you think am I advocating for? And why is it that when people of color or gay people or women, you know, say something, it's called having an agenda, and yet when other journalists say it, it's called having an analysis. You know, I think that's really an interesting question.
Let's go to a clip from your film, Documented, a film by an undocumented American. In this scene, Jose Antonio Vargas is speaking on the phone with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE.
My name is Jose Antonio Vargas. Last summer, I wrote this kind of big essay for the New York Times magazine like coming out basically as undocumented. And I haven't heard from anybody. So I'm calling you guys to get some information on kind of what my status is. No, I don't have an alien number. I mean, yeah, I'm undocumented. I don't have, you know, I don't. Are you planning on deporting me? Why or why? I mean, again, like, are you planning on deporting me? Why or why not? And okay, so I'll put that in the email. And then how do you decide whether to start deportation proceedings against somebody? You know.
That's Jose Antonio Vargas. Take it from there.
Well, actually, that was because I guess I was surprised that no one contacted me. So here I am. I admit to everything. My lawyers were like, get ready. Then nothing happened. And as we all know, 1,000 people get deported every day. There's been 2 million deportations in almost 5 years. Here I am admitting to everything. I mean, I was kind of hoping, not hoping, but like, okay, what are they going to do? I was surprised by the silence. And so I contacted the editor of Time magazine at the time, Rick Stengel, and I said, I want to write a story about why they haven't deported me. So that's actually that scene from that scene is from the film when I called ICE myself and said, you know, what's up? I haven't heard from you. And then the woman on the other line, we couldn't, you know, record her for legal purposes. And at one point I said to her, you know, look, I'm on deadline. I need a comment. And she said, we can't comment on your case. No comment. And I actually think that's a metaphor in general for how the American public thinks of us right now. Like, you know, no comment. Like, y'all know we're here. You know, we go to the same grocery stores, in the same church, we go to your schools, we work with you, we drive on the same freeway. So what are you gonna do with us, right? And as you know, that's what we're battling right now in Congress. But what is the role of states and cities? I mean, to me, that's a really important question, which is why here in New York, you know, the municipal ID bill hopefully passes through. Why can't Andrew Cuomo pass the State Dream Act is a surprise to everybody. And what can we do, you know, right now, for example, to do driver's licenses legislation in the state?
I want to ask you in terms of the response of the politicians. Part of your experiences as a Washington Post reporter was covering some of the Mitt Romney campaign.
Yeah.
And being and of course, Romney staked out a position early on as part of the chorus, the chorus of the self-deportation group. Could you talk about your experiences then?
Well, you know, I actually covered Romney the first time he ran for president in 2007 in Iowa, and then I came back 4 years later now as an undocumented immigrant holding a sign. I actually crashed a Mitt Romney rally, so that was interesting. It was the first time in my life that I ever held a sign, because, you know, as a journalist I was trained to never do that, so it was a very surreal experience actually holding that sign. But that when I crashed that rally, what was so interesting was just, again, you know, the general lack of information that people have on this issue, right? This man was like, why don't you just get in the back of the line? And I have to tell you, that's probably the two things that I always get asked is, why haven't you gotten deported? I don't know, ask the government. Number two, why don't you just make yourself legal? Right? Which is such an outrageous question. And in the film, as you know, we actually go through the form and show people, oh, I can't even get past line 2. You know, this is why people think that we just get in the corner of 23rd and 6th and get in an office and fill out a form. It doesn't work like that. That's why we need reform to happen.
Let's go back to your film Documented. In this scene in Coleman, Alabama, you interview a Republican farmer named Lawrence Calvert.
Yes.
I own 32 acres here.
And are you born and raised here in Alabama?
Yes, born here and raised in Alabama. I don't farm on the scale that I did at one time for the simple reason that I'm getting older. Paco is the nickname of my Latino worker, and it's a friendship, and he works with me also. I'd rather say he works with me than for me. If I go to Paco's house, his 3 children come hug me just like my grandkids come hug me. That's one of his little son, the youngest one. But I've accidentally erased the others. But Latinos are scared If they're here illegally, they're scared. If they're here legally, they've got family members that they're scared for. But the idea that if I've got Paco in a vehicle with me, then I'm liable also, and I can be arrested. Well, that's telling me who my friend, the state of Alabama, telling me who my friends can be. I'm a conservative, and I'm a hardcore Republican, but I don't agree with them on this. I think you've got an immigration problem, but this is no way of solving it.
Farmer Lawrence Calvert in the film Documented, as we wrap up, how his views fit into the national picture here and where we're headed.
No, I mean, I hope if every Republican can have a conversation with Lawrence Calvert. I mean, that man speaks of this issue with more nuance and sensitivity than, first of all, most of the Republican leaders in the state of Alabama, and some of our own Republican leaders in Congress.
You showed this film at the College of Paul Ryan?
Yeah, Miami University. Actually, this past Monday, about 200 or so kids showed up, mostly white, mostly conservative. It was wonderful. Because I think for them, they've grown up thinking of this issue as another thing. One woman actually said to me afterwards, she just kept shaking her head. She said, "This is not what I thought it was going to be." And I said, well, because it's not what it is. It's not what you think it is, right? And I think that's our job. That's the job for me of culture at Define American, this media and culture campaign that I run. Like, this is our job, is to elevate this issue and take it out of this political realm that we've kind of stuck it in.